They call it the land of freedom, polite, peaceful, untouchable. But tonight, we rip through the snow and expose what bleeds beneath it. Because what if the peace is a mask? What if the prosperity is borrowed time? What if the silence is hiding a storm so deep that even Canadians fear saying its name out loud? This is Canada Exposed. Before we begin, hit subscribe, like the video, and comment, ready, because this truth won't leave your mind. They call it the land of freedom, peace, and opportunity. But beneath the calm surface of the maple leaf lies chaos. Forgotten seniors, vanishing Indigenous women, and a generation drowning in debt tell a story the world rarely hears. Tonight, we confront the truths Canada wants to keep in the shadows. Behind every smiling street, a silent crisis waits. What you're about to see will change the way you view this country forever. Tonight, we reveal the 10 shocking truths Canada doesn't advertise, the truths buried under politeness, ice, and silence. Let the investigation begin. 10 truths behind the maple leaf. Number 10 lives in the shadows, Canada's hidden homeless crisis. Canada's homelessness crisis is not a flaw in the system. It is the system itself. Across major cities like Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal, tent cities stretch for blocks along sidewalks, parks, and underpasses. Each tent hides a life overlooked, a person the state silently abandoned to the streets. Winters are merciless. People freeze to death alone, often unnoticed, while tourists stroll by and city guides speak of beauty and safety. Official statistics undercount the reality. Thousands go unregistered, undocumented, and invisible to social services. Meanwhile, luxury apartments sit empty, held by corporations and speculative investors, while families shiver in the shadows. Mental health struggles, addiction, and systemic neglect trap many in cycles that seem impossible to escape. Most Canadians pass by daily without seeing, or choosing not to see, the human suffering around them. Homelessness in Canada is not just a crisis, it is a silent epidemic maintained by apathy, bureaucracy, and societal denial. Number 9. Broken minds, the collapse of Canada's mental health care. Canada's mental health system is collapsing in plain sight, and the tragedy is mostly invisible. Therapy wait times stretch for months, and in some provinces, people must wait over a year just to see a specialist. When someone spirals into a suicidal crisis, emergency care is often delayed, and they are told to check back next week, if they're lucky. Hospitals overflow with mental health patients. Hallways are filled with people waiting for help that may never arrive. Rural communities face even worse conditions. No specialists, limited clinics, and an almost complete absence of support systems. Indigenous youth are hit hardest, with suicide rates among the highest in the industrializer world. Anxiety, depression, and addiction silently spiral out of control, yet media and policymakers rarely report the depth of the crisis. The world sees Canada as calm and polite, but the reality? Millions are drowning inside their own minds. Quietly, invisibly, and without rescue. Number 8. Missing Indigenous women, Canada's silent tragedy. Canada harbors a crisis so dark that even locals whisper it in fear. Thousands of Indigenous women and girls have disappeared or been murdered over the past decades. Many cases remain unsolved. Investigations are delayed, mishandled, or ignored. Families wait for answers that never come. The infamous highways of tears are corridors where women vanish so frequently that communities have come to expect it. Police reports reveal repeated negligence, lost evidence, missed leads, and systemic bias against victims. Every year more disappearances occur, and every year public outrage fades into polite indifference. Media coverage is sporadic, and political promises rarely translate into action. Canada portrays itself as a bastion of justice and fairness, yet its most vulnerable citizens are left exposed. This isn't a series of accidents, it's a systemic failure, an ongoing tragedy, and a national shame that remains largely invisible to the world. Justice for these women is still out of reach. Number 7. The housing bubble crushing a generation. Canada's housing market has become one of the most unaffordable in the industrialized world, and it's quietly destroying an entire generation. Homes that cost $300,000 2 decades ago now sell for over $1 million in major cities like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. Rent consumes half, sometimes more, of a typical salary, leaving young Canadians scrambling just to survive month to month. Foreign investors and wealthy corporations treat homes like speculative stock, buying and holding properties empty while local families are forced into overcrowded apartments or basement suites. Students and newcomers face the same crushing reality. Politicians announce initiatives and affordability programs, yet real change never comes. Instead, the bubble grows, benefiting investors while ordinary Canadians are trapped. Young adults no longer dream of buying a home. They dream of finding a place to afford. This is not a market failure. It is a system designed to prioritize profit over people, and its casualties are an entire generation. Note 6. Canada's healthcare. The myth versus the reality. Canada's healthcare system is praised internationally, but the reality behind the headlines is starkly different. Millions of Canadians lack access to a family doctor. Emergency rooms frequently close due to staff shortages, and patients in critical conditions sometimes wait hours or even days for care. Surgeries and essential procedures are delayed for months, in some cases years, turning treatable conditions into life-threatening emergencies. Rural communities suffer the most, with ambulances taking hours to arrive and minimal hospital support. Doctors and nurses are stretched to the breaking point, battling burnout while trying to keep the system afloat. Mental health support is limited, dental care is often unaffordable, and prescription medications can be inaccessible to the most vulnerable. The promise of universal health care obscures the truth. This system is stretched beyond its limits, surviving on exhaustion and goodwill. Canada's health care isn't just under pressure. It's quietly failing millions who depend on it to survive. Are you still watching? Subscribe, share, and comment. Join those brave enough to face the realities others ignore. Number 5. The overdose crisis killing Canadians silently. Canada is facing one of the deadliest drug crises in its history, yet the world barely notices. Toxic opioids, including fentanyl and carfentanil, have transformed entire neighborhoods into open-air emergency zones. In cities like Vancouver, paramedics respond to dozens of overdoses daily, some people dying within minutes of consuming street drugs laced with poison. Safe injection sites and harm reduction programs save lives, but the supply of deadly opioids continues to expand, outpacing public health measures. Addiction spreads quietly through marginalized communities, rural towns, and Indigenous populations, leaving families grieving while governments scramble to react. This epidemic isn't accidental. It stems from decades of overprescribing painkillers, a lack of addiction treatment resources, and criminal networks exploiting gaps in the system. Deaths pile up, often unreported in mainstream narratives. Canada's image of safety and compassion masks one of the country's darkest realities. A silent epidemic that kills thousands each year and leaves society scrambling to keep pace. Number 4. The immigrant dream that becomes a nightmare. Canada markets itself as a land of opportunity, welcoming immigrants with promises of safety, prosperity, and a fresh start. But behind the glossy brochures lies a harsh and often cruel reality. Highly educated professionals, doctors, engineers, scientists, and teachers arrive full of hope, only to find their qualifications dismissed as not Canadian enough. Years of experience, degrees, and expertise are ignored. Many are forced into survival jobs, driving taxis, cleaning offices, or working minimum wage positions just to pay rent. Families strain under the weight of bills, savings vanish, and dreams fade into quiet despair. Systemic barriers, bureaucratic red tape, and subtle discrimination trap newcomers in cycles of underemployment, leaving them frustrated, exhausted, and often invisible. Canada relies heavily on immigrant labor to fuel its economy, yet it rarely supports these individuals in realizing their potential. Dreams that brought them across oceans are quietly crushed, replaced by the daily struggle to survive. The immigrant dream often becomes a quiet nightmare, one that the country prefers to keep invisible. Number 3. Lonely lives, the tragedy of Canada's elder care. Canada is growing older, but its long-term care system is quietly crumbling under decades of neglect. Staff shortages, underfunding, and endless bureaucracy have turned what should be a place of dignity into a prison of isolation. Seniors live and often die alone, their needs overlooked, their suffering invisible. During the pandemic, military reports revealed shocking truths. Elders were left dehydrated, unwashed, and alone for hours, sometimes days. Some passed without a single human touch, forgotten by a system meant to protect them. This isn't new. It's the result of decades of systemic disregard where profits and paperwork outweighed compassion. Today, thousands spend their final years trapped in understaffed facilities, dependent on exhausted nurses to meet even basic needs. Families visit under tight restrictions, often unaware of the harsh reality inside. Canada calls itself compassionate, but behind these walls, that image crumbles. Here, the most vulnerable endure a silent, devastating tragedy few dare to witness. Number 2. Crushed dreams. Canada's youth drowning in debt. Young Canadians are facing one of the harshest financial realities in the Western world, a reality far worse than the polite headlines ever admit. Student loans now take decades to pay off, not years. Rent rises faster than wages. Groceries spike every month, and a single emergency, a broken car, a medical bill, or a missed paycheck can push an entire household into crisis. Many young adults work 2 or 3 jobs and still can't afford basic stability. Savings don't grow, they disappear. Vacations, marriage, children, and home ownership, these aren't milestones anymore, they're luxuries. Credit cards fill the gaps that wages no longer cover. Debt becomes a constant companion, a shadow that follows them through every purchase, every decision, every sleepless night. This isn't bad budgeting, it isn't irresponsibility. It's a system designed to squeeze a generation until they break, quietly, invisibly, and alone. Number 1. Behind polite faces, Canada's culture of silence. Perhaps Canada's darkest truth is its silence. A cultural pressure to stay polite, stay calm, and not make noise has created a society where problems are buried beneath courtesy and small talk. The homeless freeze quietly on city streets, unseen by the polite passerby. The depressed smile politely in classrooms and offices, hiding the depth of their suffering. Families struggling with addiction or debt apologize for being a burden, fearing judgment rather than asking for help. Even journalists hesitate, and institutions suppress inconvenient truths, preferring calm facades over accountability. Canada speaks softly, even about its own pain, and that quiet becomes a weapon, shielding failures, neglect, and crises from the public eye. Behind every snow-covered town, behind every polite conversation, a storm brews. The country known for peace hides its fractures beneath calm. And that silence is its most dangerous and enduring force. Subscribe, like, comment, and share this documentary because the world needs to know what comes next. In our next episode, we expose a country even darker. Canada is not the paradise the world imagines. Behind the politeness lies pain. Behind the snow lies truth. And behind the silence lies a crisis no one dares to speak about. But here, on Dark Decoded X, we speak it. We expose it, and tonight was only chapter 1.